I don't know if people see it, there's a guy called James Fields, who is the man who murdered Heather Heyer in Charlottesville 2 years ago, who asked for mercy today from the courts in the States. He didn't show much mercy to Heather Heyer when he drove a car into an anti-racist demonstration and killed her. But we have to remember where people like Fields get their courage and confidence from. When they marched through Charlottesville, they carried torches and they shouted, "Jews will not replace us." And Donald Trump commented on that demonstration, and he said that there were good people on the anti-racist demonstrations, but there were good people on the other demonstration too. That was a demonstration of fascists marching alongside the Ku Klux Klan, shouting anti-Semitic slogans. And this is when we talk about anti-Semitism, we talk about the growth of Islamophobia, and we talk about the growth of racism. This is now something that is coming right from the top of society. Donald Trump is somebody now who is promoting the idea that these are acceptable norms, that you can say these things and that you can do these things. And when you think about what happened in Europe, we're going to talk a little bit quickly about what happened here, but in Europe, when Marine Le Pen or when Matteo Salvini or when Viktor Orban are elected in Hungary, in Italy and France and other places, these are people with records of the most vicious racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism that is possible to imagine. Matteo Salvini is an individual who really has been central to turning the Mediterranean literally into a graveyard. The Guardian published this week the names of people who died over the last 10 years trying to flee war and poverty in North Africa and the Middle East. This is what we're talking about. And when we talk about things looking like the 1930s, it's not hyperbole. Right? This is reality now. We have far-right organisations and individuals really who would like to see the kind of methods we saw in the 1930s central to politics. So let's be real about where the problem lies and where the problem's coming from. I do want to say something before it gets lost. I mean, people have said it about what happened in the Northwest, right? Because sometimes there can be a rewriting of history, can't there? Oh, you know, people like Tommy Robinson or UKIP or these people, everyone, stuff over. They were never going to get in. Let's not worry about it, right? Robinson stood because he thought he was going to get in. Robinson stood because he got 15,000 people in the middle of central London beating up police officers and anti-racists and trade unionists, right, who said they wanted him out of jail when he was in jail in jail last summer, right? He wasn't running to lose. He wasn't running to look demoralised on the night of the election. It was because people took up the argument, and some people said it's better to run a kind of secret campaign against Robinson, whatever. It wasn't. It was better. Paul Jenkins, who's sitting at the back, when he went up to Barrow and he tried to do his normal smarmy handshaking bit, Paul did a wonderful thing. He said, "You're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi," right? Simple point. But on election night, what did Robinson say? The problem was that everywhere I went, people said to me, "You're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi." So the point got across. So I think it's really important that we say this really about it. Even if things shift now about about the kind of campaigning we're running shifts, we have to remember that we isolated those people because we took them on, not because we ignored them. And some people said it was better to ignore them. Now what are we facing? Well, two bits really. One is, let's not forget it, Nigel Farage, right, was a big winner on that night, wasn't he? Right, in the European elections, right? And it doesn't matter whether you voted Leave or you voted Remain. Let's remember, this man is a systematic racist. He's somebody who stirred up Islamophobia, who scapegoated refugees and migrants. He's also, by the way, not a common guy in the street. He's a millionaire. Right, so actually, and he has not changed his spots. So there might be all sorts of people who voted for the Brexit Party for all kinds of different reasons, right? But let's remember the guys at the top, right, and stuff, what they're saying. And when you get a Labour candidate getting up, right, and stuff, and being racially abused during the process of that stuff on election night, you know the problems that are going on. People have said it about Johnson and Hunt, but to be honest with you, it is scary, isn't it? Right, it's scary, both about all the other policies they've got, but somebody, you know, who thinks it's a laugh for somebody to retweet Katie Hopkins talking about Londonistan, right, because we have a Muslim mayor, right, so this is something that actually a few years ago they wouldn't have been able to do. And people remember that Johnson is somebody who talks about black people having watermelon smiles. Right, so over it. This is nasty Etonian rubbish, but it's stirring up this kind of feeling that you can say these things and you can do these things, right? It's all acceptable now to say things people couldn't have said in the past. And that's why when you talk about building an anti-racist movement, it's vital. Because actually, every time you turn the TV on, every time you read the newspaper, every time you look at these politicians saying this kind of thing, right, what it does is it gives people confidence to do it. I don't know if people sort of report the stuff. There's a Lib Dem councillor sitting on a tube in London a couple of days ago and stuff being racially abused about it. Why? Because everybody who's got these nasty little ideas now thinks they're legitimised. They think it's all right to come out with this rubbish, right, stuff. And we have to try to create an atmosphere where they don't feel on the front foot, where they feel on the back foot about this thing. And that's why I want to talk about a couple of things I think that we can do. The first thing is, when we're talking about building a mass anti-racist movement, right, we've got to try to build one. That means we need to get beyond the people who are normally political, get beyond the people who are just in trade unions and the rest of it and stuff. They won't be honest with you. Inside workplaces now, these ideas get raised. That's why the trade unions are so important in taking up these arguments. And by the way, when Dave talks about, he doesn't blow his own trumpet, he's one of the key anti-racist organisers inside the university and college union. If they sack him, what does that say to anybody and stuff about it? But we've got to try and reach out to communities that don't normally get involved and stuff, and start to popularise anti-racism at every level. That means discussions, arguments, but it means music, it means culture, it means a vibrant alternative to what these people have got to say. You're going to have another thing in Manchester. Manchester's the centre of the universe at the minute, right? All the Tories are turning up here, aren't they? On the 29th of September. Lucky you. Right, sort of about it, right? But I'll tell you what I'd be thinking about doing now. We want to come out in our tens of thousands. We want to come out and say that Johnson, or whatever, or whether it's Hunt, or whatever, you know, individual, completely illegitimate individual gets elected and stuff, they just ain't welcome here. Just the way Tommy wasn't welcome here, right? Johnson ain't welcome here either, and we've got to really build up to that. I know Stand Up to Racism's called a protest on the day that Johnson or Hunt will be elected against whatever new racist leader of the Tory party is. Let's go out and let's start to build a momentum up. In October, we're organising what we're saying is an international conference in London, because it is an international conference. We've got people coming from the States, all across Europe and the rest of it, because now we know from what people have said here, it's not a nice idea to be internationalist at the minute, right? The right are organising internationally. Steve Bannon is going around meeting Viktor Orban, meeting Le Pen, meeting these people and stuff. They are trying to organise to push us all right back, and we have to organise in the same way. Last thing I've just raised, because it's a while away, but just to put it in people's minds. Next March is UN Anti-Racism Day. And Stand Up to Racism has organised demonstrations over the last couple of years around it. What we had for this year really was a breakthrough, because I think we had 20-odd countries where there were demonstrations on that day, and also there were 2 demonstrations in the United States, which, as we all know, is quite important at the minute and stuff around it. Our idea is that next March we have mass demonstrations across the world on the day, really. And actually there are all kinds of organisations and groups and campaign organisations and trade unions beginning to come together to say that, because the point is now we have to draw a line in the sand. So we look back at the lessons of the 1930s, it's not just exactly the same, etc., etc., but come on, we've now got big politicians and we've got far-right organisations who are putting them across the most vicious forms of racism and divide and rule possible. Unless we organise on a big scale, these people will not go away. Right, stuff. Unless we organise on a big scale, stuff like people said it, to have Tory leaders now thinking they can come out with the same bloody language that Robinson and people sometimes use, really, just shows how far they'll go to cling on to power no matter what they do. And that means creating an anti-racist movement isn't just a nice idea, it's a bloody necessity. Right, stuff, because we cannot allow our communities to be ripped apart by ordinary people turning on one another when we all know what the real problem about it is. But we did a magnificent thing in the Northwest. Don't ever let anybody say that wasn't important. You imagine what it would have been like if Tommy Robinson had walked out of that bloody thing as an MP that night. You imagine what it would have felt like, and imagine how beautiful it was to watch him cry his eyes out and say he was off to watch the telly for the evening and stuff about it. All part of you did a magnificent job.